Today, we're going beyond the guitar, beyond the player, and into the pure physics of a sound. We're opening up the blueprint, the celestial manual for one of the most iconic tones ever created. We're talking about a sound that feels less like it was played and more like it was engineered. A sound that just fills up any space, whether it's an arena or just your headphones, with this incredible majesty. So, to build something this huge, this immense, you absolutely cannot start with a messy foundation. The first rule, the bedrock of David Gilmour's entire tone, is a perfectly prepared, absolutely pristine sonic canvas. And here's what's so interesting and kind of backwards from what you might think. The whole journey starts with an absence of distortion. Gilmour used his high-watt DR103 amps, not for their grit, but for their massive headroom. They could get unbelievably loud while staying crystal clean. And that is the perfect foundation to start painting on with effects. And this is exactly how he prepped that canvas. See, by keeping the bass under control, dialing the treble back just a bit, and really pushing those mid-range frequencies, he made sure the guitar had this powerful voice that could just slice through the mix without ever getting harsh or muddy. That boosted mid-range, that's the secret to making the guitar truly sing. Okay, so our clean foundation is set. Now it's time to bring in the big guns. These are the three core components, the primary weapons, that generate the actual voice of that classic Gilmour sound. Now, each of these pieces of gear is a legend in its own right, for sure. But the magic, the real magic, is in how they interact with each other. So let's break them down. First up, the guitar. And this thing was no museum piece, believe me. It was a workhorse, a constant experiment. The Black Strat was modified relentlessly. But for those soaring, epic solos, the key component is that high-output Seymour Duncan SSL5 pickup in the bridge. It just gives you more power, more sustain than a standard pickup, and it pushes everything else down the line just a little bit harder. All right, so if the high-watt amp is the canvas, then the big muff is the main color. And we're talking about a very specific one, the ram's head version from the early 70s. This pedal right here is the heart of that famous, creamy, saturated, seems like it lasts forever sustain. It's not really a distortion, it's more like a tidal wave of pure tone. And now, we introduce the dimension of space. Long before digital delays, there was this machine, the Binson Echorec. This was not a pedal you just stomp on. It was a heavy, electromechanical piece of engineering, and its unique design is absolutely fundamental to the sound we're talking about. And this is exactly why it sounds so different. See, while other units used a loop of magnetic tape, the Binson used a spinning metal drum. This whole system created delays that were warmer, a little bit darker, and had this really unique rhythmic quality, almost percussive. This is the machine that literally creates the space in the sound. But before we can start filling up that space, we have to perfect the voice that's going to live in it. And that brings us right back to the big muff. Because on its own, raw fuzz can be kind of harsh, a bit untamed. The next step is a crucial piece of sonic engineering that tames that beast. And this is the central problem we have to solve. The big muff is famously aggressive, right? So how do you get that liquid, controllable, singing lead tone out of it? It's not as simple as just turning a knob. There's a trick. Here it is. This is the secret. The solution was to run the big muff into a color sound power boost. But, and this is the key part, the booster wasn't there to make things louder. It was being used as a powerful, character-filled EQ to shape and smooth out the fuzz after it was already created by the big muff. So the crucial thing to understand is the order. Most guitar players would put a booster before their distortion pedal to slam the front of it and get more gain. Gilmour did the complete opposite. By putting the power boost after the big muff, he used it to sculpt the final tone, turning this aggressive fuzz into an incredibly expressive instrument with total control over the attack and sustain. All right, now that the voice is shaped, it's refined, it's perfect, we can finally use that Binson Echorec to place it inside that three-dimensional rhythmic space we've been talking about. Everything inside the Echorec is built around one foundational number, roughly 300 milliseconds. Think of that as the main beat, the quarter note. It's the rhythmic anchor that all of its complex, beautiful patterns are built from. And here's the genius of its design. The Echorec had 4 different playback heads, all fixed at different spots around that spinning drum. So what you get isn't just one echo, but 4 potential echoes, all perfectly in time with each other, creating these syncopated musical repeats. When you start engaging different combinations of those heads, you get that famous galloping echo. It's incredible. And look, this isn't just some nerdy technical detail. This is the sound of Pink Floyd, that iconic intro to Time, the deep atmospheric sonar pings and echoes. That is the sound of this mechanical multi-tap logic at work. It's an effect that's also a compositional tool. So we have the tone, we have the space and the time, but the sound is still a little static. The final layer, the last piece of the puzzle, introduces a sense of physical movement that makes the entire soundscape breathe and come alive. And this is done with a rotary speaker. By literally spinning a speaker horn around, you get this beautiful, shimmering chorus and vibrato. It's like the audio version of looking at a reflection in moving water. It adds this three-dimensional depth that a normal, static speaker just can't touch. Throughout the mid-70s, especially on the Animals album, Gilmour used all kinds of these rotary units, but the key was blending them. He'd often run something like the Yamaha RA200 in parallel with his main high-watt amps. This let him mix the solid, direct punch of his main amp with this constantly moving, swirling, atmospheric layer. The result is a sound that feels both absolutely massive and totally alive. And there you have it, the complete blueprint. You start with that high headroom clean canvas. You add the primary weapons, a hot-rodded Strat, and a ram's head big muff. Then you refine that raw tone with that unconventional fuzz boost synergy. You map it all onto a rhythmic galaxy using the Echorec's multi-tap delays. And for the final touch, you add that 3D movement with a rotary speaker. Every single step is essential. This incredible sonic formula is really just one star in a whole universe of amazing sounds. It's just a perfect example of how art and engineering can come together to create something timeless. So the question is, what other sonic galaxies should we explore together? Let us know. We want to hear from you.